His shooting spree that killed 5 people was not his first crime with a gun. The man who wrote openly about who he'd kill and how had a prior conviction, just unsealed now. Parents are still struggling to find childcare 2 years into the pandemic. The issues with childcare started well before the virus arrived. Wildfires, they wreck water supplies. There is one particular group at risk following the Marshall Fire. The Democratic primary for Congressman Ed Perlmutter's seat is effectively over as of today. And the Broncos go with a fresh face for the franchise's next coach. That has rarely worked for them, but let's choose to believe, because this is next. Tonight, we're learning the man who shot and killed 5 people in Denver and Lakewood in December had pleaded guilty in 2012 to another fit of rage involving a gun. Judge recently unsealed that case. Court documents show that Lyndon McLeod got into an argument with coworkers at a medical marijuana warehouse in Denver. One coworker said McLeod intentionally bumped him, then pointed a gun at him, saying, "You pushed me and I can put one in you." Court documents show McLeod then pointed the gun at another coworker. McLeod pleaded guilty to 1 felony count related to the incident. He was given a 2-year deferred judgment. The case was dismissed and sealed in 2014. In 2021, Denver police were tipped off by a man in Germany about the alt-right revenge novels that McLeod wrote, where he named real people and said that how he would kill them. DPD says there was no indication that McLeod was living in Denver at the time. United legal expert Scott Robinson says even if police knew about the case, knew about the books, would not have been enough to arrest him.
The information the police had last year, coupled with the book and its contents itself, certainly raised suspicions about McLeod and the likelihood of criminal conduct. What it didn't create was probable cause to arrest or search any location.
We reached out to Denver police to find out what they knew about that 2012 case when they got the tips about the violent books. We haven't heard back from DPD. The documents were unsealed from that old case when 9 News, along with Colorado Public Radio and Denverite, filed a petition to make those records public. It's almost 2 years into the pandemic. Parents are still struggling to make childcare work. The whole childcare industry these days is struggling to hire and to keep its classrooms open. Our Anusha Roy explains beyond the pandemic, the issue is inequality in the system.
Denver's Early Childhood Council surveyed 136 providers.
70% that said that they've had to close 1 or more classrooms in the last 2 months, and that's generally due to staffing.
60% said that they were short anywhere from 1 to 4 teachers because of an opening they're still hiring for, COVID exposures, and time off.
And I think people underestimate the impact that childcare services have on the economy as a whole. If people aren't able to get care for their child, I don't know how they would go to work.
Yes, it looks like it's recovering a bit. There's still a gap compared to where female participation was pre-pandemic.
Ryan Gedney with the State Department of Labor is talking about the number of women who left their jobs during the pandemic. The rebound happened after schools started in-person learning again.
Good progress in 2021, and hopefully that does continue into 2022.
But the recovery of child care services jobs plateaued recently. We're well acquainted with the effects of COVID, staff having to quarantine, parents worried about putting their kids in child care during surges. But then there is an issue that is much older than the pandemic.
I mean, before the average was $13, $14 an hour. I mean, it's very low wages. It's a primarily female-driven field. There's a lot of minorities that work in ECE. Like, there is definitely some equity issues.
This month, minimum wage in Denver increased to just over $15 an hour to address wage inequality and cost of living.
I have someone that's been there for 20 years that's making 16. Well, how do you increase them equitably? Because the whole scale has kind of shifted. And there's no funding really for that sustainable salary piece.
So childcare services in this case, for this story, we're talking about outside of K through 12. And that trend in Denver, you're seeing it across the state as well. Now, some of those fundings are kind of coming in these short-term bursts. That's money that can go to bonuses and incentives to try to just keep people in the job. The state says it's also working on salaries for certain programs and providing funding so that people can get the qualifications to be hired in the first place, Kyle.
Anusha, a couple of things come to mind. Obviously, knowing that this is a woman-driven industry, and we know that the pandemic's had a disproportionate impact on the number of women in the workforce as families reshuffle things. And then as the industry says, well, let's incentivize people their competitors in other industries have been incentivizing people for a year and a half.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And so all of those factors are also playing into the teachers in these classrooms as well. And so one of the things that happened is that there's also already a lot of turnover even before the pandemic. You have people who are being paid lower wages who still have to be qualified to get these jobs. And then sometimes they don't have health insurance, not great during a global pandemic. And then like you were talking, Kyle, right? You see all of these other industries throwing money to hire people, all of these added benefits, and some of these teachers who are saying, hey, I want that job because it's meeting more of my needs right now, and then we lost even more teachers in the classroom.
All right, Anusha Roy, thank you very much. Colorado's health leaders said today they think about 75% of the state population is currently immune to the Omicron variant, either due to vaccination or infection. The state says that immunity percentage is expected to reach 80% by mid-February. When it comes to the issue of vaccinations, state epidemiologist Dr. Rachel Hurley was asked today, what does immunized mean? First doses, boosters, what constitutes being fully vaccinated these days?
CDC actually has some pretty clear definitions. They recently came out with a new definition that talks about individuals being up to date on vaccinations. And up to date basically means that you have received all of the vaccinations that you are eligible for. So for adults that have received 2 doses of vaccine and are eligible for a booster dose, that means they've received that booster dose of vaccine. And we know that having received that 3rd dose or booster dose is really what's going to provide you the greatest level of protection against infection and against severe disease.
Our statewide positivity rate continues to creep down. That's encouraging. Just more than 22% of COVID-19 tests done statewide over the last 7 days came back positive. We were near 30% a little over 2 weeks ago. And our ICU bed capacity is starting to open up a bit as well. Good news there. 90% of the state's ICU beds are occupied. Currently, there are 152 open ICU beds across Colorado. Our state's COVID-19 incident commander also mentioned today the state's evaluating on a daily basis now when they can lift the emergency rules for both hospital staffing and EMS procedures. We've talked about those crisis of care standards. They allow, among other things, paramedics the ability to deny transportation to younger, healthier people, and even to leave COVID patients who are in continuous cardiac arrest. Boulder County's brought in some experts who investigate whether water is safe after disasters. One concern after the Marshall Fire is the help available for people who have private drinking water wells. Here's Katie Eastman with that.
As snow covers burned homes in Boulder County, it's what's even harder to see that Dr. Andrew Welton flew in for.
So these are drinking water pipes. Many of them are metal, but some are also plastic. And the plastic ones are the ones that generally don't survive fire, or even if they do survive fire, it can become contaminated. And after you put clean water in there, they can make that clean water unsafe.
As a Purdue University professor of civil, environmental, and ecological engineering, his specialty is water quality after disasters.
There are people that need help, and there are people that want to help. But sometimes the people that want to help don't necessarily know how to make the right decisions. They don't know who has that information to help them.
He helps connect governments and utilities with that right information. His lab has identified about 30 chemicals that show up in water systems after wildfires. The city of Louisville called him right away.
I came in the week after and helped them figure out what they need to test for, where they need to test.
Dr. Welton is back again this week to help with what he says will be the biggest water concern for people impacted by the Marshall Fire.
Private well owners are on their own. The state does not have the financial resources at the present time to support them.
Until January 29th, Dr. Welton and his team will sample private wells for free. But after that, people could have to pay thousands. After the Oregon wildfires, the governor authorized money for private well testing. Dr. Welton thinks Governor Polis should do the same. For Next, I'm Katie Eastman.
Boulder County told us it does not know just how many private wells were impacted. County's looking for financial support for that well testing. We reached out to the governor's office and they said they're evaluating providing additional free testing, but not until after that Purdue team leaves. You know, emergency is no time to realize that you're not signed up for your community's opt-in emergency alerts. It's why we've been talking about it near daily here for weeks now, reminding you this only takes minutes to sign up. And we're also trying to troubleshoot any issues that you report to us, big or small. It's like Kathleen noticed that Xfinity Mobile is not a listed service provider for Thornton's Code Red notification sign-up. Thornton's emergency manager told us it's still in there under the old Comcast name, and until Code Red adds Xfinity, people can always just select other for their provider. So most political endorsements don't really matter. One of the rare exceptions may be when a popular longtime politician decides to wade into their party primary in order to try and pick their successor, which is why it's worth mentioning that retiring Democratic Representative Ed Perlmutter has made his choice to replace him. His endorsement of State Senator Brittany Petterson is further proof that she's moving from frontrunner to presumptive Democratic nominee in the newly redrawn 7th Congressional District. Petterson planned to run for the seat when Perlmutter was briefly in the race for governor years ago. When he decided to stay put in his current job, so did she, till now. Republicans are headed for a primary in that race. They have several candidates from the most conservative wing of the party in the race now, and it's possible that a more centrist Republican may get in as well. The 7th district is redrawn and projected to slightly favor Democrats in the general election. The Broncos' new head coach has never been an NFL head coach. We look back at the team's track record with rookie head coaches. We're getting some feedback about the ish that's more useful than we might have thought. And the sweet, sweet sound of service to your neighbor. Next. Some service members in Colorado are on prepare to deploy orders right now, ready to go if needed to support NATO forces if and when Russia invades Ukraine. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby says parts of the 4th ID out of Fort Carson have been placed on what's called increased readiness. Certain, you know, Russians have been gathering forces at the Ukrainian border. They're demanding that NATO deny membership to Ukraine, to other ex-Soviet countries, and they're ordering NATO to roll back military deployments in Central and Eastern Europe.
Well, another day, and we picked up a few more inches of snow across the metro area. 2.8 inches officially for us out of DIA foothills, close to about 3 to 6. Now, for us here in Denver, that brings us up to 13.4 inches worth of snowfall this month. That is more than double our typical month-to-date average. So pretty impressive stuff. Now, with that snow gone, that'll allow those temperatures to really plummet 5 degrees. That's it for us here in Denver tonight. Mountains, single digits, and teens. Tomorrow, though, we start to warm back up. 40s for us here into Denver, and that'll give way to a nice warm-up for the weekend ahead. Temperatures getting on up into the low to mid-50s before more snow, maybe another 3 to 6 inches, returning for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week.
The Broncos have to hope that Nathaniel Hackett will be the next Red Miller or Dan Reeves, because most of the franchise's first-time head coaches have not turned out so hot. Former Green Bay Packers offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett signed a 4-year deal to become the Broncos' 18th head coach. The Broncos interviewed 10 different candidates before deciding that Hackett was the man to replace Vic Fangio, who went 19-30 in his 3 seasons here. Before Hackett's hiring, Broncos have had 17 head coaches in franchise history. Of the 17, 10 of them came in at the beginning of a season as a first-time NFL head coach, so a rookie. Combined, the 10 rookie coaches have a record of 263 wins and 273 losses, so pretty 50-50. But more than half of those wins came from just 2 of the 10 coaches. You had Red Miller, who won 40 games between 1977 and 1980, took the team to a Super Bowl, and Dan Reeves, who won 110 games between 1981 and 1992, took the Broncos to 3 Super Bowls. Without those 2 guys, the rookies are in rough shape. The Broncos have hired 4 coaches at the beginning of a season who did have previous NFL head coaching experience, and they won almost 60% of their games and took the Broncos to their 3 Super Bowl wins. Hey, we're getting some feedback tonight after I said that mile markers are essentially useless to most drivers. You know, when they tell you there's an accident at 160. We got talking about this because of a lane closure on eastbound I-70 at mile marker 164-ish. And I said that the ish is about as useful as most of the general mile marker alerts. Stacy was among the next viewers writing in to disagree with me on that. She said those markers are pretty useful for people like her who live and drive the Vail Valley all the time. She said she knows she lives off of marker 163, drives her kids to school at mile marker 180 every day, and she says she knows precisely where 164.5-ish is. The markers in our state on the interstates go lower to higher when you go west to east and south to north. So I-70 starts at 0 when you come over the Utah border, goes to mile marker 449 before you hit Kansas. I-25 starts at 0 just north of Raton Pass and then tops out at 298 before you hit Wyoming. Little help can go a long way.
I'm going to shovel up your walk and get all this snow out of here.
That's the best news I've had all day.
Just ask some of the Coloradans who depend on it on days like today. It's a sign that anyone can play an instrument if you just believe. Next. When that beautiful snow falls, help arrives for older Coloradans who have trouble shoveling. It's thanks to a longtime nonprofit in our community. A Little Help pairs neighbors in need with willing volunteers. Corky Scholl went along today.
We've got a pretty good storm going here today. It's going good, and it really does accumulate. And for our older adults to know that somebody's going to be able to come over and shovel, oh, she got a puppy, is just such a huge weight off their shoulders. Hi, Joanne. How are you? I'm Hillary. It's really nice to meet you. I'm Hillary Simmons. I'm the executive director of A Little Help, a local nonprofit helping older adults to thrive in their homes. I'm going to shovel up your walk and get all this snow out of here.
Whoa, that's the best news I've had all day.
I think it's so important that our older neighbors know that their neighbors of all ages care and that they're visible on their blocks. It's so easy to become invisible when you're isolated. It's easy to be forgotten, and it's so important that we don't forget our older adults. I've worked with A Little Help in one capacity or another for almost 10 years now, and the mission has always just really resonated with me. My grandma got to age at home in place where she wanted to be, and it meant so much to her.
58 years. We've lived here 58 years.
Yeah.
And it probably means a lot, huh, to stay here.
Right. You know, we couldn't stay living here if it wasn't for your organization.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's great.
We want to thank you.
Yeah.
58 years in that house, you can tell how much it means to them. Little Help's been around since 2005 and has close to 3,000 volunteers who help out about 1,500 older Coloradans. They're always looking for more volunteers. There's info on that at alittlehelp.org. We should mention, A Little Help was one of the first ever nonprofit recipients of your Word of Thanks generosity, like the first month we were doing it back in 2020. We're back here with a sign of a mountain town's unusual music program. That and your feedback next. It's a sign that invites you to pack your imagination the next time you head up to Crested Butte, because free air guitars are available at the Last Steep Bar and Grill. They ask that you please just return your instrument once you're done rocking out. There are those hooks there that you can place your air guitar on. The thing that's tough, though, is you can't really tell if they're in use or not. But if you see a great sign, then that's a great sign. If you see a great sign somewhere in Colorado, just rock and roll. Send it our way. Email to next@9news.com or get our attention on Twitter with the hashtag HeyNext. Inbox is once again filled with excitement tonight at the fact that Anusha is back on the program, her second night back after some time away with baby. She said it's good to be back, but also good to go home to him tonight. And on this Holocaust Remembrance Day, a note in on Twitter from Jay, who says, today we remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered. And he asked, please, everyone, watch your choice of words when trying to compare what your government is doing to what happened during the Holocaust. Jay says, quite accurately, there is no comparison. See you next time.